Every year on Memorial Day in May, a Japanese grave visitation ceremony is held at Mount Olivet Cemetery in Queens, New York City. Under the warm spring sunshine, prayers are offered to approximately 100 spirits who laid the foundation of the Japanese community. One of the central organizations at this grave visitation is the Japanese American Association of New York.
やっぱり我々としては毎年ここに、日本人日系人社会が集まりまして、その皆さんのご苦労とそういうことを思いながらいろいろ感謝の気持ちで、こうやって毎年、集まっていただいています。
The Japanese American Association of New York is one of the leading organizations in the Japanese American community in New York. Through education and culture, it enriches and brightens daily life, while also regularly holding enlightenment activities for health and legal consultations by lawyers, ensuring social welfare activities so that people of all ages and genders can live with peace of mind without discrimination. Helping each other for 100 years. This is the motto of the association. JAA was known as the Japanese Mutual Aid Society when it was established in 1907, just at the beginning of the 20th century. As the name suggests, it was established for the purpose of Japanese people helping each other. And as the motto implies, it has a history of over 100 years. The person who proposed its establishment and served as its first chairman was Toyohiko Takami. He was the first Japanese physician to be licensed to practice in New York City and advocated for the construction of a Japanese cemetery. When you hear about his success as a physician in America, you might think he was born into a wealthy family and studied at a prestigious medical school, but the reality was quite the opposite. During his childhood, he embarked on a 500-kilometer journey on foot just for the sake of his dreams. And during his student days, he struggled to study while enduring freezing cold and hunger. Always striving to save money, he sometimes worked part-time to earn a living, gradually and steadily continuing his journey, becoming a doctor through hardships. It was through this struggle that he realized the importance of helping each other and established the Mutual Aid Organization. It's time to find out Toyohiko Takami's journey in America. Toyohiko Takami was born in 1875 in Kumamoto Prefecture, Japan. He came from an ex-samurai family that had served the Hosokawa Clan before the Meiji Restoration. Raised under strict educational policies, at the age of 12, he entered one of the leading boarding schools in the prefecture. The rapid westernization of Japan after the Meiji Restoration also played a role in Takami's upbringing. Kumamoto, at that time, was keen on introducing Western culture, hiring American teachers to establish Western-like schools such as the Kumamoto Yogakko. Additionally, the region was known for its active Christian community, with the emergence of groups like the Kumamoto Band, considered one of the roots of Protestantism in Japan. However, the school Takami attended placed emphasis on traditional subjects like Confucianism and classical Chinese literature, prohibiting students from showing interest in Western culture. Despite this, Takami secretly attended a lecture by a Christian missionary, Reverend Gulick, and was particularly moved by the story of Joseph Hardy Nisima. Nisima, who was deeply inspired by the teachings of Christ, clandestinely journeyed to America during the Bakumatsu period and graduated from a local university with a degree in theology, becoming the first Japanese to do so. Upon his return, he founded what is now known as Doshisha University and became a prominent educator in Japan. Takami resolved to follow in Nisima's footsteps and go to America. However, Takami's father strongly opposed Western education, including learning English, let alone the idea of going to America. Nevertheless, unable to abandon his dream, Takami learned that he could leave Japan by becoming a crew member on a foreign ship. In April 1890, without informing his parents, he left home for Osaka, where his relatives lived. Initially intending to travel from Kumamoto to Osaka by ship, Takami found out that his family had anticipated his departure and decided to walk the approximately 500 kilometers to Osaka instead. It was a grueling journey, walking about 25 kilometers a day. His feet swelled and he faced numerous challenges along the way. One rainy night, when he asked a police station for shelter, he was coldly turned away.
However, there were many people who helped Takami along the way. While camping in the mountains of Hiroshima, a local hunter invited him to his home and provided him with food. Benefiting from the kindness of others, Takami reunited with his relatives in Okayama and then headed to Osaka. Determined to convince his relatives, he found work as a sailor in Kobe, allowing him to leave Japan and via a voyage through the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, eventually arrive in New York. It was October 1891 when he reached New York, a year and a half since leaving his home in Kumamoto. When Takami arrived in America, the country was experiencing economic growth following the end of the Civil War, and New York City was a hub of capital from around the world. Simultaneously, there was a significant influx of immigrants from Europe, leading to extreme wealth disparities. As for the Japanese living locally, only a few successful businessmen in trade and diplomats thrived. The Japanese community numbered around 300 to 400 people, a very small community indeed. Takami's goal was to study at an American university while learning English. Upon arriving in New York, he began working, thanks to an introduction from an acquaintance, and was introduced to an elderly woman. This elderly woman, Nancy Campbell, worked in Brooklyn teaching English to poor Asian immigrants while spreading the teachings of Christ. When Takami expressed his goal of receiving education in America, Campbell began teaching him English every night. This encounter with Campbell had a significant impact on Takami's life. Campbell, seeing Takami's enthusiasm for learning and studious nature, treated him like her own son. Within months of meeting, they began living together. One night, Takami asked Campbell why she was living in the dirty, impoverished areas instead of seeking better living conditions. Campbell, while looking up into the sky, replied, "Look at the shining stars. They shine on us as well as on the people in the finest mansions. Regardless of race or residence, all humans are equal and have the right to live." Through living with Campbell, Takami learned that all humans are equal, regardless of race or residence. About 2 years after starting his life in America, with Campbell's support, Takami began his student life. This not only involved negotiating scholarships with schools, but also covering tuition and living expenses, which lasted for a staggering 15 years. For Takami, who could barely speak English in his mid-teens, this was a significant assistance. Not wanting to solely rely on Campbell's care, Takami began living frugally. He worked as a snow shoveler in winter and found a job as a chef on a floating hospital during summer breaks. He also made large quantities of preserved food, using cheap soy sauce and meat, sustaining himself while devoting himself to his studies. 2 years after Takami got to New York, he graduated from a prestigious college preparatory school to enroll in Cornell University's medical school. Then Takami chose the path of a doctor to help those suffering from poverty. This decision was influenced by witnessing the difficult lives of poor immigrants, much like himself, and he chose to become a doctor to alleviate their suffering, just as he had been helped by many, including Campbell. Even after enrollment, Takami had to maintain excellent grades to keep his scholarships. He studied under prominent pathologists, including Dr. Ewing, known as the discoverer of Ewing's sarcoma, and graduated with honors. His struggles and triumphs were covered in the New York Tribune, and at the age of 31, Toyohiko Takami, a boy who had crossed the ocean alone, graduated from a prestigious medical school through sheer determination. After graduating from university, Takami worked at a hospital while opening his own clinic in Brooklyn. Like the shining star Campbell had spoken of, Takami's clinic radiated light equally to all, regardless of race or social status. He sometimes provided medical care free of charge to those in need and earned respect as a physician of compassion. Additionally, as the first Japanese physician licensed by the city of New York, Takami's name became widely known within the Japanese community. The number of Japanese living in New York and along the East Coast increased to around 1,500 to 2,000 by the early 20th century, far more than when Takami first arrived. This period saw significant development in the Japanese community in New York, with the opening of Japanese grocery stores and restaurants, as well as the publication of Japanese-language newspapers. Takami envisioned creating a mutual aid organization for all Japanese living in New York and along the East Coast. The catalyst for this was a forensic autopsy exercise Takami conducted during his second year at Cornell University. The medical students received 12 to 13 bodies for study, one of which was considered as a Japanese person by its name tag. Blessed with the help of many, including Campbell, Takami felt fortunate to be living in America as a medical student. He imagined that the deceased Japanese person, like himself, might have come to America with dreams. Takami might have empathized with this unfortunate Japanese person, who had passed away without anyone by their side. This may have prompted Takami to think about creating a cemetery for such individuals. Takami's idea resonated with others, and in May 1907, the New York Japanese Mutual Aid Society was established, with Takami as its inaugural president. The organization's objectives, suitable for a mutual aid organization, were clearly stated: aid for the poor and sick, assistance for funerals, and construction of a cemetery. Initially, the membership was around a few dozen, but by the following year, it exceeded 200, reaching over 500 members 2 years later. During the annual general meeting, Takami made a speech in English, emphasizing the organization's purpose of elevating our moral and social life by rendering helping hands to one another. This speech was covered by the New York Times, gaining recognition from influential American companies and organizations. As the Mutual Aid Society grew, so did the understanding and support for cemetery construction. The required funds amounted to $20,500, equivalent to about 9 million Japan yen in today's currency. Takami and others began fundraising activities. Historical documents indicate the amounts of donations received, with the names of prominent figures at the time, such as Mitsui and Company and Morimura Arai and Company, as well as Jokichi Takamine, listed. Takami himself contributed $100 individually. Various companies and individuals, large and small, who supported Takami's efforts, contributed approximately half of the required amount, allowing the construction of the Japanese cemetery. The Japanese cemetery, which continues to serve as a spiritual haven for local Japanese and Japanese Americans, was built over a century ago, thanks to the efforts of Takami and others. Takami, who traversed 500 kilometers on foot in his youth and survived his student days with little to eat, overcame many difficulties with the support of others. He pursued the path of a doctor to help others, just as he had been helped by many. And he established the Japanese Benevolent Society, embodying the spirit of mutual assistance.
高見豊彦先生が日本人共済会を設立した時もやっぱりそれは助け合うというのがスタートだったと思うんです。ニューヨークにおいて一人で亡くなっていく方もいます。そういう時に私たちはサポートしてお葬式をしてあげたり、それから日本の家族に連絡したりとか、助け合って100年という日本の民意みたいなものを感じますし、今もその流れの中に私たちはいると思ってます。
Finally, on to the next 100 years. The spirit of mutual assistance will continue to live on beyond time.